Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judy Geller, Director of MetalCon, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's MetalCon Live. I'm here today with our MetalCon Marketing Manager, Lizmani Medina, who is at the controls. I don't know of any company that is not currently struggling with or talking about their workforce and employee retention challenges. But luckily for us today, Karl Feldman from Hinge Marketing is here to help us find our way. Before I hand you over to Karl, I just have a couple of brief announcements. Please mark your calendars for our next MetalCon Live, which will take place on February 16th, when the Metal Construction Association brings you Thermal Breaks in Cladding Support Attachment Assemblies. The session is accredited for AIA credits for architects, and it'll be presented by Bilal Khan, who is the architectural products consultant from Northern Facades, who will be presenting. For details on the webinar and to register, visit our website. You can go to metalcon.com or look for the email that we will be sending later today. Also, just for those who are interested, our call for MetalCon 2022 presentation form is now live at metalcon.com under the resources tab. If you have a topic, if you are an expert on a particular area that would be of high educational value to contractors, subcontractors, architects, designers, installers, and others in the metal construction industry, please, we invite you to submit your course ideas by February 18th. And also, be sure that MetalCon 2022 is on your schedule. It'll take place from October 12th through 15th at the Indiana Convention Center in Indianapolis. To get early info on MetalCon 2022, you can pre-register on metalcon.com, and you'll get all the inside scoops in up to the minute. The housing block is already open. Finally, just a quick reminder, if you need technical help, reach out to MetalCon support in the chat box, and don't forget to complete the post-webinar survey so you can earn your AIA LUs for today's session. And now, without further ado, let's turn the session over to Karl. All yours, Karl. His mic, he's muted.
Testing 1, 2.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the great intro. Happy to be speaking here at MetalCon, and I think the topic we're going to be covering today is one that it's getting a lot of just national, global press, but it's also hitting really close to home, especially in all of our industries, verticals, and our audiences, and AEC particularly. We're going to be sharing a little bit of our insights from the Hinge Research team, and then also talking about what things we can do within our firms, our organizations, to really understand the Great Resignation and take some positive steps towards recruiting and retaining the top talent. Let me see here. I'm going to fire up my screen. Okay. Just to check, you should see a title slide with someone that looks very isolated and sad in a workplace. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a lot of experience in offices as we've grappled with pandemics. There's a lot of empty workspaces. There's a lot of stress dealing with hybrid work environments and all of these things. It's kind of drove this cover slide for us. Give a little bit of background. Some of you may know Hinge. For those that do not, we are a research, branding, and full service marketing firm agency. We are professional services ourselves, and we work exclusively with professional services firms. We do have some clients that are in the software space, but they focus specifically on professional services. We're about to celebrate 20-some years in business, And we've really started to focus on professional services early on, and thinking about what the fastest growing, most successful professional services firms are doing differently than everyone else, and how can that inform go-to-market strategies. And because professional services, our experts really are what audiences are buying, employer branding, which we're going to be talking about today, has really ridden along with that all the way through since our inception. I am a partner here. I go across all of our verticals, so I can represent some broad professional services insights, but also spend a lot of time in the AEC, architectural, engineering, and construction community. And I'll point out where a lot of the listening audience here today really fall in some of the stats that I will share. You see all my contact information here. Please don't be a stranger if you have follow-up questions going through MetalCon or reaching out directly. We always want to share some of our insights with the communities that we serve, and we publish a lot of this information for free studies. We find it as a way that we can understand the industries and what issues are really afoot here. So we're going to hit two main topics today, two big buckets. One is just understanding what is the Great Resignation, what's driving it, why do we care, how is it impacting our industries, what are the challenges, and then we're going to flip into here are some specific strategies that we can apply to respond. I think when we were talking about this webinar, we had two bonus strategies will be included today as well. And we will make sure that we have some Q&A time at the end so we can have some discussion. So a lot of the data that we're going to review today is from Hinge's employer branding study. And this is something that we fund, invest in ourselves. It's part of our key understanding. And we sampled across professional services verticals that we serve. So we will see some contextual information around everybody from management consulting to tech. And we will highlight architecture, construction, and engineering, where most of us fall, and the audiences that we serve fall into those groups. So I have over 1,000 professionals that participated, 10 different service industries. And we looked at perspectives both from the talent evaluators and the job seekers themselves. Just like in our overall go-to-market strategies, it's important to understand what are our own perspectives and what are the perspectives that are being brought by the talent we're looking to recruit and retain. Okay. I will keep an eye on the chat box. So if anyone out there, please don't be shy. If you have questions as we go, please put them into chat. I will do my best to address them as we go when they're relevant at section breaks. And then whichever ones, whatever questions might still be in there, we'll come back to at the end of this presentation. We'll also be hitting some polling questions in here that can help to inform some of the strategies and give us some specific ideas about what challenges we are facing as a group. And we can talk about that as we present some of those strategies that we can use to adapt here. So first polling question we'll ask is, what discipline do you belong to? And you should see a poll pop up: metal, construction, design, engineering, or somewhere else in the supply chain. So you can take a couple seconds and drop that in. I'm watching the percentages populate. Looks like we've got a pretty good spread across the board. Design and engineering in the lead. Right, and so this bodes well for a lot of the information as we go. It's a lot of construction, design, engineering side, some specific metal, and some in supply chain. So I think to this group, as we look at some of these stats, thinking about our affinity to these different, both the architecture, engineering, side of things, and then also some of the manufacturing supply chain. Most of the metal discipline and supply chain would be included in either engineering or construction in the way that we segment our results. Thank you. And next, what size is your firm? We'll be making references to our segments in terms of micro, so less than $1 million, small, 1 to 5, and mid-size 5 to 50, and then our large organizations, 50 million plus. Okay, good mid-size representation here. We'll find these results very, very on point. It's a good cross-section. I will say in almost all of our primary research, we over-index on the mid and large size firms, especially when it's related to growth and go-to-market strategies, because at the smaller end of the spectrum, you are either scaling quickly or you're plateaued, and then you may be merged, acquired, what have you. You'll find that those results are quite different than the medium and large, and as a trajectory, I think everybody's tracking in that direction here. So this lines up really well with our research. Thank you. Okay, so let's tap into what is the Great Resignation anyway. We've heard that buzzword. I think now the Accentures of the world are transitioning into its Great Resignation, now to the Great Transformation. This is broadly saying that there have been some fundamental shifts in talent and recruiting and retention. And here's a statistic that some of you may have seen from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this is just showing at a very high level, quit rate is up dramatically. And the jobs that are actually being quit, it's increasing, and this trend over the course of 2020 through 2021 and still continuing, this rate has climbed. So you have an unprecedented amount of talent just leaving, and they may be looking for others. They may be taking a break or moving into the gig economy somewhere, setting up their own shingle, as it were. But there's a lot of movement here. And as a side and looking across vertical, Hinge works with quite a few folks in BPO or recruiting and staffing worlds. There is really a big push in the segment of passive seekers. So there's always some element of job seekers that they don't really give any indication to their employers that they're looking. They may be unhappy, dissatisfied, but they're staying put. But they're looking for new opportunities. That segment as a whole has increased. So within that kind of drive towards the quits, that sub-segment of the passive job seekers has really increased over time. Okay, and I just want to address a question. I don't really have any ability to change the way that I'm sharing my slide. We'll have someone on mobile who's having trouble seeing it. We are going to be recording this, so if you're on a mobile device and you're having trouble seeing the slides, please do come back and check out the recording. Okay. So looking at this graph, and this is from the universe of respondents here, we've got about 14% that were actively seeking new positions. 41% describe themselves as passive seekers. So they were currently employed and looking off to the side. Their employers probably do not know that they're in an active search. And then you have your portion of non-seekers. So what are the biggest challenges when you are looking to recruit? I think, just exacerbating this whole notion of Great Resignation, in a lot of areas, we're seeing accelerated pace of work. What challenges are standing in our way of acquiring the top talent we need to deliver the kind of work that we have won? You see a poll here for what are the biggest challenges we're facing. Compensation, finding candidates who fit our firm's culture, managing a remote culture, other competing industries, so leaving to other industries that might be parallel, but not ours, a totally different industry. Leaving for different types of firms, or a recognition from candidates that our firm didn't suit the cultural requirements they were looking for. And so real quick, I'm seeing that finding candidates who fit our firm's culture, that is the top response. Compensation is always going to be there. That's number 2. And then rounding out, we have managing a remote culture and other competing industries. Now, compensation will acknowledge that. I think largely that calculus is going to be the same no matter what. It's kind of like when we talk about new business, it's what gets you asked back to the table so that your firm can decide what the compensation rate could be. We do see increases in a lot of areas. However, that is going to be off to the side of some of the strategic recommendations we cover today. Our goal would be, would that talent come back to the table and say, look, I've got a stronger offer somewhere else. I'd really like to work on your team. Would you be able to meet me there? Okay. Great responses, thank you. Okay, so I promised some of that cross vertical perspective. When we look at professional services as a whole, there are definitely some differences within these different audiences in terms of active job seekers. So how many folks are raising their hands and saying, look, I am actively looking for a position. I'm not just passively doing my research and looking for greener grass on the other side. I'm actually out there. I've made a decision. I'm going to change. I'm going to change my my place of work. Okay, so in this group in AEC, construction has the highest percentage in relation to non-seekers, highest percentage of active seekers. Architecture and engineering have less. However, important point here, and just be glad you're not in marketing communications. A lot of churn, although we would say here at Hinge there's a lot of opportunity too. But along with the non-seekers, important to point out, and we're just focusing on AEC here, that there are almost as many passive seekers as there are non-seekers. So that means from your firm's perspective, you may have folks that are looking passively if they are not fully connected, or they may be on the edge of satisfaction. They might fall into that passive seeker lane. Now, if you are looking to acquire talent, that may be an opportunity, because if we are doing the right things as firms, as brands, promoting our employer brand and sharing how great our culture is and what it's like to work inside of our organization, those passive seekers represent a great opportunity. Those folks that are looking, if they are seeing the validation that they're looking for, a culture that they want to join, that's what's going to help them make that switch into active seeking and then reach out and contact. Okay. Being acquired, this seems logical, but there's some pretty compelling statistics behind that. Mergers and acquisitions can have a pretty significant impact on retention. And so if your firm is doing the acquiring, certainly less active seeking and passive seeking going on. If your firm has been acquired, then you have more passive seeking and active seeking. And that seems logical, but the numbers back this up. Overall, if you've gone through M&A, it's important, especially during transition points, to keep an eye on employer brand KPIs, employer satisfaction surveys to understand how strong our culture is. Do folks feel included? Has that transition period been smooth? Another factor, and we have to acknowledge this in current times, has been firms' response to the pandemic. That has a direct bearing on satisfaction and is one of the big drivers behind what's being called the Great Resignation, or folks churning, moving between different professional homes. So the rating of talent of their employers' handling of COVID-19, non-seekers gave an overwhelmingly positive review. And this is a quantitative scale, so 62%, 9, 10 above a positive sentiment, 36% somewhere on the fence, could have been better, but pretty good. And then as you move through passive seeker and active seeker, you can see how that calculus switches, right? Active seeking, they predominantly say that their firms did not handle the pandemic well, and that could mean a lot of different things. We get into the grains of responses. That's everything from challenges of remote work, communication challenges, even culture coming through in a virtual environment. All of those things play into those results. The other thing to consider is the timing. So tenure of team. Typically, if a team member has been with your firm for a longer period of time, there's a lower proportion of active seekers. So folks will be more inclined to stay and retain the greater tenure that they have. The 1 to 2, 3 to 5 year range is the most common active seeking time frame to keep an eye on. So thinking of team communication, culture building activities focused around that 10-year range, that can help to prioritize efforts across your team. Okay, so I'll pause here. If there are any questions, I'll keep an eye on chat. I haven't seen any come through here, but if you have any questions, please do let me know. And we'll flip into some strategies that we can use to attract and retain a top talent in this period of a lot of activity and a lot of people moving around between professional homes. Okay, so number one, getting to know your targeted talent, right? So what perspectives are most important when getting to know the talent that we're really looking for? What is their experience level? What things are different in their needs at those different stages in their career? And then also what qualitative things are they looking to hit a home run on in their new work home? So we break this into entry level, mid-career, and leadership, senior professional. I'll talk a little bit more about these as we go through each one of these categories, but the drive, the motives, and what things are prioritized in each one of these personas is fairly different. It is, when you look at it, it's pretty logical for what one would be looking for at that stage of career, but some of the channels might not be as readily known. Thinking about how these folks go out and validate this kind of experience, it certainly changes in these different groups. All right, so we'll start out with entry level, and now we know in our industry, I mean, that 10 to 15 year experience, that talent is in heavy demand. But one way to get there is also hiring a little earlier. So identifying the raw talent, the DNA, if you will, and then helping to groom that talent up within your organization. What are the top priorities in this group? The opportunity for growth and advancement, number one. Geographic distance from home, even in a remote environment, this is still something that weighs in. So on one hand, some of our work may be geographically independent. there's an opportunity to expand the search beyond our geographic area, and it still matters to the job seekers. Okay. Just a sound check. We see someone lost sound out there. We'll make sure that it's nothing on my end. Keep an eye on chat and see if anybody else has that issue. Now, talk a little bit about the channels. Where do these entry-level talent folks go to validate a new employer? They're looking at a dedicated company webpage. So searching your webpage for all of the validation, or what's your culture, kind of work experience, what would my experience be coming in as an entry-level team member? They are looking at universities. So what kind of validation or involvement, engagement do they see on their university sites or with their university community? And then they are also looking at niche job boards, right? You have the aggregators like Indeed that are a powerhouse and often pull from some of these niche areas. But one thing that we see, if there's a specific talent that we're looking for, structural engineering, what have you, advertising on or being visible on niche job boards, community websites or forums, that's a place that entry-level talent is looking as well. So all that said, number one, growth opportunity at this stage for these folks. They are looking for a clear path. What's my advancement? Are there examples that I can see of entry-level talent growing within an organization? So some of the things like visible expertise or content can help to validate this, but they are looking for that signs of that growth potential. Now, looking at the mid-career job seekers, this is that 10 to 15 year vet that everybody is looking for very heavily. Top priorities. They've made their path. They understand where they're going in growth. Will I be respected? Will I be able to contribute to the team? And is that going to be visible, right? Am I going to be able to build and really hone my craft at this new team that I'm joining? And conversely, am I going to be spread too thin? Like, there's such demand in this category. Talent also understands that. So they are keenly aware. Am I walking into a situation where there's been such a great need that I'm going to be swamped on day one? Where do they search? They are more familiar with and have at this stage in their career built more of a network. So they are going to be relying more heavily on trade associations and organizations that they are probably engaged with already. So that is a number one place to pay attention and look for these mid-career job seekers, whether they're active or passive. They are already engaged in some of the community organizations. And so this may be a place to make the connections, start to introduce your culture here in these areas. Okay. So number one, all of that synthesized together, company culture is the thing that matters most. Am I going to join a new work team where I'm going to be supported, where I can grow, where I can perfect my craft and continue networking and building my visibility as a leader? So that is really what matters most to these mid-career talent seekers. Okay. Now, when we get into leadership or more senior roles, shift a little bit. Top priorities, the ability to work remotely. And this is coming from the talent. So that flexibility to not be in the same geographic area and travel and using video conference or remote technology may be one solution. But that ability to work remotely and have more flexibility, that is a growing consideration as you look to bring on more senior talent. The other sentiment that was strongly expressed was having one's voice or opinions heard. So as part of leadership, as part of the senior team, will I be able to apply my expertise? Am I going to have the impact that I hope to bring within this team? Is there a culture of understanding, hearing? Is it supportive? Are they going to be able to affect the change that your firm wants and they want to bring? So really team and who they're working with really makes a difference. At this level, depending on what level of leadership the talent may be joining, they are most focused on joining a team, not necessarily just the firm, but who are they directly working with? Who are their peers in thought leadership within your organization? Where do they search? At this point in their career, they have hopefully an abundant network of peers, colleagues to reach out to. LinkedIn was #1 in terms of channel. Network and referral was second, and sometimes included LinkedIn. We dig into more of the details. And they often also have relationship with recruiters at this point. So recruiters know who these senior positions are, the leadership. So that may be a fast entry point to gain access to some of the senior leadership that may be passively looking for other opportunities. So summing that up, team. Is the team going to listen to me? Am I going to have a good collaborative environment to work in and build the impact that I've been working towards in my career? Okay. Now, pause here for a second. I think we will have copies of the slide. So we are recording this, so we'll be able to go back and we'll be able to provide this deck to share. So there's no quiz on the data at the end. You will be able to refer to this, and I hope it's helpful. We always appreciate hearing the perspectives as well on some of these stats and how they actually relate in everyone's different environment. Okay, so strategy #2, accessing employer brand. Okay, what the heck does that mean? So employer brand is who are we to talent, right? What do we stand for? What's most important? What are the most important elements of that? We think of branding when it comes to new business and audiences, who's buying our service. It's just as important to the top talent that we're looking to recruit. So looking at this audience, and when we did our survey across the board, all these active, passive, and non-seekers, what were the things that were most important to them in their employer's brand? And #1 was a defined and well-articulated culture. And so this is a little bit meta, but I'll define culture in the way that we describe it. Culture is, this is how we do things. Within your firm, how do we work together? How do we execute? How do we perform? The how and some of the why, but more of the how is really the culture. Second, right next to that is, what are the differentiators as an employer? What is different about your firm than other similar firms? That's important, again, to buying audiences, also important to talent. What in that experience is different? Is it better? It might be better for some. It's also important to qualify. There may be elements of your culture where you want to filter folks that would be reaching out. If you do not enjoy a culture of learning, Hinge is not a good place for you. As an example, we are voracious learners, researchers, always want to connect the dots. If that's something you want to show up and perform a task, our culture is probably not a wonderful fit. So there can be yes and no here. So differentiator is not always something that we want only this person. It's sometimes describing what your culture is not. Does your website reflect that brand? A website, especially now with all of the remote work, it is really the face of our brand, of our organization, and kind of a window into that experience. So that is really important to make sure it's well articulated and shows versus just telling. And it's one thing to say you have a fantastic culture and describe all the ways and be superlative around that. Talent knows how to validate that. So whether it's on the website looking for examples of challenging work experience, the type of projects that they would work on, or that they're looking on LinkedIn or Glassdoor for validation of that good culture. There's lots of channels to validate this. But the website it's the home, it's the hub of that description. Does your content, I alluded to this a little earlier, does your content speak to the visibility of your experts? So especially that heavy demand mid-career expertise, they are looking for that validation of their growth. They're looking for that promotion of their expertise as they build their career. So is there a commitment? Is there visible, are there visible examples of that type of strategy in place? That's something that a lot of firms in our industry are getting better and better at in promoting themselves for go-to-market strategy for new business. It's also an important validation point for talent because they're looking for those voices of folks so they can see themselves in that position. Here's someone in the middle of their career, speaking about this really engaging project and their discipline and how they think about that. They can see themselves in that. They want to be there. And then last, but definitely not least, it should be a no-brainer, but a clear understanding of what a best candidate looks like. For anyone that's been through a hiring process or interview process lately, this can be one of the most frustrating things for talent, is that walking into a situation where it's not 100% clear what a best fit would look like. So making sure that interviewers and teams are fully equipped to describe what does the perfect candidate look like, that's a key thing that talent is looking for, that certainty and focus and understanding of what a good fit does actually look like. Now, one way to get all of this information, there's different levels of how in depth you want to make this, but an employer brand study focused on your firm can help to uncover some of these key points, right? What is your reputation and visibility as a place to work? It's often assessed hand in hand with your go-to-market strategies and what your brand looks like to prospective buyers, but having that lens on the employee, on the talent experience, the employee's experience, just as important. You have an employer brand, whether you know it or not. Just check out Glassdoor. So whether you have your finger on the pulse of what your employer brand is or not, there is a perspective. So some secondary research looking and seeing what validation points already exist on your firm is a good place to start. Getting some of that input directly from team, that's a way to understand where there are gaps or how your firm may want to shape that narrative, but that perception exists whether you're controlling it or not. Typically for an employer brand study, and this is our experience, whether Hinge helps with this or not, or other agencies are in-house to do this right for survey design and execution, it's usually $20,000 to $50,000 with a 4 to 6 week schedule. So it takes that time to do a qualitative and quantitative assessment, analysis, and then actually presenting and synthesizing those findings into here's how we can practically apply our findings. You're looking at about a month to 2 months. Okay, and then that should provide that basis, an objective basis for next steps. What are the decisions that we need to make? What are the most impactful things we can do to attract that top talent that we're looking for? Okay. Number 3, culture. Keep talking about culture. This is how we do things around here. We could all benefit from some tuning up and some communication of that culture. Often the culture is well known within organizations, but only pieces of it peek out into the rest of the world. Okay, so going back to these, what things are most important across the audiences in AEC, company culture and values and good fit, just like this audience, very important. So what you identified in the poll, talent job seekers feel the same way. They're looking for a company culture that fits them, some of the why and how matches up with what they would find satisfying in a workplace. Competitive salary and compensation, number two, that's always going to be there, but remember that was not number one, right? All of these other things are changeable and are the reasons to get asked back to the table. Good company reputation, track record, clear vision for the future, strong leadership, the team that I'll be working with directly. Do I have confidence there? Doing a variety of interesting and challenging work. And lastly, that opportunity for growth and advancement. We know that that's most important at the early stage, but still there as you move through the other categories. All of these factors are important to pay attention to. Okay, now what things on the other side of the coin are they looking to avoid? Any signs of poor management or lack of business sense, poor reputation and track record, signs that it's not a good cultural fit. And remember what I was mentioning a little bit ago, that your brand reputation as an employer is out there, whether you want it or not. Sometimes those things, if someone is dissatisfied, they may be the most vocal. So it pays to do a little bit of secondary research and see what validation points are out there, positive and negative. Lack of organizational vision and mission, like where are we headed overall? Do we have that passion behind where we're headed? Lack of opportunity or growth advancement, unfair compensation, lower on this list. So compensation, still a factor, but connecting this with a prior slide, if all of the other things are super strong, if compensation is fair, maybe not the best, but compensation is fair, can swing the decision in your firm's favor. Being spread too thin and wearing too many hats, something that, being oversubscribed, many of us are aware of, and one of the reasons it's driving the search for talent, but making sure that doesn't happen when I join a team, that it's just going to be drinking from the fire hose day one. It won't be have an opportunity to make the impact that I'm really looking for in my career. All right, so changing a culture is hard work. It's got to be based on reality, not anecdotes and assumptions. That's why a little bit of research and quantitative analysis really makes a big difference in having confidence and strength when leadership addresses some of these issues. It's important to limit your goals and really prioritize 1, 2, 3. What key elements are A, measurable, and B, that you can get there quickly. You have a path to get there. Treat it just like a project. I mean, this audience specifically, you wouldn't be doing what you do if you didn't have a handle on project management. Changing a company culture is no different. So identifying the prioritized steps, hitting key milestones along the way, and being able to communicate the successes and alleviating or addressing any negatives along the way. That is the difference between successful and smooth change and years-long struggle. Organizations have, a cultural flywheel, if you will. So a lot of the, how we do things, it can be entrenched in comfort. So making that change does take effort. It does take a very prescriptive vision to get there. Once you have these changes going on, communicating is just as important as the doing. It's like the old description of a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it. Well, the communication, especially if your firm is mid-size or larger, becomes one of the key challenges. So reinforcing the culture at every opportunity, meetings, staff, communications, any of these forums that you can have a cultural touch point, that's important. Writing down and documenting key cultural values can help keep everybody aligned and on the same page. Externally communicating. So remember when I was talking about the website is the face of your brand as an employer, making sure that that's there. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, video is even stronger. Now, the polish and presentation of that video, it's a little harder to make, but if you are able to do that in a way that reinforces your brand and the level of sophistication that you bring, video can be really powerful because it's a little window into the day-to-day experience. And then also, don't be shy bringing it up. You know, being able to articulate your firm's culture, how you do things, how you think about things, the pros, and even some of the cons and challenges, finding every opportunity to talk about that externally, that can really make a big difference. You know, it's not something that just happens by circumstance. Okay, number 4, showcasing your expertise. Here's another one that's really important for that mid-career expertise as well. When we were talking about that visibility and what am I able to do within an organization to build my visibility within the industry, to get validation for, you know, my career growth and my trajectory towards more senior leadership positions. Visibility of expertise is a big deal. This is a great thing for overall go-to-market strategy, visibility, branding for prospective buyers. It's just as important for prospective talent, because talent is looking at these experts as an example of where they can be within your organization. So making sure that we're highlighting biographies, that we are tying to appropriate relevant work experience, you're connecting it to your firm's specialties and, you know, the solutions that you provide, as well as giving examples of achievements, highlighting key personnel at all levels within your organization. That can make a big difference when talent is looking to validate, hey, I've heard the pitch, I've heard the story. Do I see evidence of this? This is a key area. Last but not least, search engine optimization. It is visibility that has a machine and search engine in the middle of it. But thinking about this kind of content, the experts that you are promoting through these types of strategies, search engine optimization just scales that reach. Often the first thing that potential talent does after they read a job description, learn that a position is open, they're going to go out and do their secondary research. So the more effectively you are visible, your firm is visible, your experts are visible, and those dots connect, the more powerful a first impression will be made before that talent even speaks to anyone at your firm or your recruiter. Okay. All right, number 5, introducing job candidates to your team. You know, it's often said that talent is not just and they're joining a specific team. So thinking about the power of peers, right? Well, what team talent would be joining, getting a clear view into day-to-day and expectations. Remember, articulating clearly what the best candidate looks like, what the growth opportunities are, and what the experience and culture feels like day-to-day. No one's going to be in a better spot to do that than your current team. So thinking strategically about how you introduce them and that interview process is a key piece to bringing in that top talents. Peers will focus on specific topics like skill set or fit more than senior leadership, for example, because they're doing it. Also consider even introducing a wingman or wingwoman buddy scenario right in the interview process. That's something that we hear time and time again, especially in our heavily technical industry. Will I have support in my onboarding? So being able to paint that picture clearly is a big win as well. Okay, and then lastly, we've talked about a lot here, and frankly, we could talk about this all day long. There's so many different data points, strategies, and techniques to apply. It can be a shortcut to bring in professional help in this realm. When I mentioned something, kind of offhand, survey design, executing employer brand surveys, there's a lot of science and art to that. What are the right questions to ask? We've done branding surveys for folks that, more than half of the organization has only been there for 1 to 2 years. You can imagine the kinds of challenges bringing together within teams, understanding segments, what are recent acquisitions versus highly tenured folks. There's a lot of ways to analyze that data and get to those simple priorities that will help you make a practical change. So don't shy away from, and we're not pitching to say there's a lot of good firms or even internal teams that can work with outside consulting help to bring the attention and expertise you need to solve this problem. I will say again, in the pandemic era, visibility, communication is a key challenge. So the level of effort that's going into just hearing your team and what the struggles may be and identifying potential risks, if you're on the other side for passive search, or identifying here are the things that are incredible about our team that we should be communicating more concisely, getting focused support and someone who lives and breathes this every day can be a way to really sharpen that attention and shorten timeline, getting to practical impact. So brand studies, recruiters, candidate generation consulting, and change management. We talked about culture change being a big deal. That's many projects in itself. So getting some expert guidance, just like you guide your clients, can be really beneficial, especially in the early stages, or if you're facing an acute issue right now. If you have specific talent that you have business on the line for, and it's the constraint, there is a value in getting some of these things solved. I will share broadly, there is a growing gulf between the haves and have-nots. The firms that take a systematic, considered approach to recruiting and retention versus those that do it a little bit more organically, hands-on, or by the seat of the pants. There is a growing gap between those firms, and it has a direct correlation on growth and profitability. Professional services it's different here than when you get into products and B2C, and even with that, there's still the demand for product services and competition from other industries. So doing some of those early steps and understanding and crafting the most impactful project plan for your employer brand recruiting and retention efforts, that's strongly advisable. I think the challenge is it's going to continue to shift. We believe that's going to continue as a moving target, but it's not necessarily going to get easier. Regardless of economy, ups and downs, the amount of churn that has taken place over the last couple years, there are going to be ripples from that effect for years to come. So we would encourage you, whatever path you take, consider a methodical approach to recruiting and retention, and think about your branding not only from the perspective of new business and potential new partners, but also from the eye of your current and future talent. All right, so I'm going to pause there. And so I've got all my contact information. I'll open it up for questions and answers, and you can raise your hand, check the chat box. I'm keeping an eye on there. Any questions or thoughts or experiences to share here? Okay. All right. Well, if there are further questions, please feel free to reach out to MetalCon. As it was mentioned before, please do fill out your surveys. But thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you soon. All right, MetalCon. All right, thank you. I'm seeing some of the text come
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
I see everyone participated, and we will have a copy of these slides both on YouTube with this recording, and maybe Karl will share with me his version and I can send it to anyone who emails info@metalcon.com. Thanks everyone for participating today.
All right, thank you everyone. Take care.